Salam, peace, and shalom. Welcome to Interfaith Explorations. And I am actually so sad because today is our last class of this session. You all know me, but still, for recording purposes, my name is Sophia Said. I am the executive director of the Interfaith Center, who is the main sponsor for these classes. Along with me is Dr. J. McDaniel from Cobb Institute, co sponsor for the classes, and Louis Smythe, our administrator for the Interfaith Center, who is helping all these videos get to you. So, thank you, both of you, for helping make it happen. So, today our theme of the class is around Native American religious text and spirituality. And I'm super excited for that. For one reason, of course, I want to learn more about it, but also because this is a very important tradition. And in our work at Interfaith Center, although we do a strong effort to do justice to all the traditions, but we have not had a whole lot of study done on this one. So I'm really excited that we are going towards learning more about Native American tradition. I'm trying to share something with you all, which, if you give me a minute, I will be there. So every year we host this annual interfaith prayer service around the anniversary of September 11. And one of the things which we highlight in this prayer service is sacred sounds from different religious traditions. And in that, we always have somebody from Native American tradition who gives us some sacred sound from that. And this past year, we had William Warden Woodpecker, some of you might know him, who played a beautiful spiritual song for us on his flute. So he's a flute maker who lives in Clinton, Arkansas, and who has been a part of Interfaith Center's work and who has been representing the Native American tradition in Interfaith Center's work. So I am going to start today's session by something that William played for us this year. And then from that, we will go on to our teaching component. So let's see if I can get my screen up here. Yes, here we are. And I hope you all can hear him. Nope, you cannot. So give me 1 minute.
Can't hear.
Well, with huge gratitude to William for his spirit and his sound and his flute, I give it to you, Jay.
All right, thank you. Thanks for beginning in such a good way too. And I'm really glad that we're dealing with Native traditions today. And if you happen to have purchased the book that we've been using, it actually speaks of Indigenous traditions. And it includes more than Native American traditions. It includes Australian traditions and African traditions and Hawaiian traditions. And all of those traditions are called Indigenous traditions. And I think that most people recognize that those are really the earliest forms of religion that we have on our planet. They came long before the Abrahamic traditions. They came before Buddhism, came before Hinduism. And so those really are the earliest traditions. They emerged from the hunters and gatherers. And the earliest part of our history as a people, we were once small groups foraging for food and hunting and living in communities of 20 or 30. We were the hunters and gatherers. Even farming had not been invented. That's when religion began. And it began with storytelling and with rituals and with a sense of the spirituality of the earth, and also a need to be joined to the earth for survival purposes. So these nature-centered traditions, of which Native American traditions are an example, have a special, and to my mind, have a special prophetic function for all of us, because they remind us of our need as a species to be bonded, to be linked with the more than human world, certainly not simply for the sake of personal spirituality, but for the sake of the survival of the planet. So how the world needs Native traditions. We'll have the first reading in a moment, and I want to take note that Lewis has spent some time with Lakota Sioux. It was in South Dakota, is that right? And done sweat lodges in interfaith settings. And Lewis, I hope you'll feel free to chime in. And I'm guessing that Lauren, if you're here, are you here? Yeah. Lauren, did you happen to take the course in Native American traditions with Dr. Harris? Yeah. So Lauren, you know a good bit about Native traditions from that course.
Well, I misunderstood you. I wasn't able to take that course, but I did take the Native American philosophy, which was very closely intertwined with their religious traditions.
Great. So I want to say three things to get started, and then let's just jump into it. The one is that many of us yearn for something like an earth spirituality. We yearn for some way to be richly bonded with the more than human world. And I use the phrase more than human rather than the word nature, because the word nature sometimes suggests two things: humanity on one side and something called nature on the other. But truth be told, we're part of that larger web of life. It's not something external to us. We're part of that larger family of life on earth. So that's why I say more than human world rather than nature a lot of times. So what does spirituality look like when it's rooted in the aliveness of the more than human world and the animals, the plants, the hills, the rivers, the trees, the stars, and yes, the spirits and the ancestors? For who is to say that the more than human world is limited only to what's visible to the eye? Does it not include what's available to the heart and the imagination? And who is to say those spirits and ancestors don't live? They may well live. They do live from a native perspective. So that's point one, just that it's an earth-centered spirituality, and we'll be reading more of that. Point two is, interestingly enough, the word religion is a Western word. It's not to be found in India. It's not to be found in China. It's not to be found in Africa. It truly is a Western word. And it seems to have been connected to the Latin word religare, which has something to do with ligaments. So it's a good word, but it's a Western word. And some people can think of religion as kind of a compartment or a dimension of life. You know, I have my economic side and my family life and my work life, and then I've got the religious side of my life. That won't work with Native traditions. And for that reason, many Native scholars avoid the word religion. And they've coined a phrase that I find helpful to name what's going on in these Indigenous traditions. And the phrase or the term is lifeway, Lifeway. And if you think of your lifeway, if I think of my lifeway, it includes everything. My family life, my dream life, my economic life, how I earn a living, if I farm, how I farm, if I make pots, how I make the pots. It's my lifeway. And some scholars suggest that you don't really have Native American religions. You have Native American lifeways. And we segment out from that something called religion or spirituality, but not exactly true to so many Native traditions. That's point 2. Here's point 3. Many non-Native folks, myself included, are drawn to Native traditions. We see movies about them, we read about them, we hear something in them, it's so attractive. But there's a danger there. And the danger is that we'll go to Native peoples and we won't really understand their struggles they go through, their community life, how they were expropriated on our continent by white Europeans. We won't join in the political struggle. We just want their spirituality. So thank you very much. I'd love your spirituality and good luck to you. And you can understand how Native peoples may feel, stay away. You find your own spirituality. You want to take one of the last things we have going for us. Find your own. So there is among some Native peoples a resentment that white non-natives or non-natives will come and say, oh, I love your spirituality. Let me learn from you. Let me do a sweat lodge. Let me wear my beads. Let me join you. But they say, please, that's New Age spirituality, or that's appropriative spirituality. Please, no. With those thoughts in mind, the readings that we'll do for today, we are going to talk about earth-based spirituality, and we are going to talk about these matters. But I thought it might begin. Many natives, by the way, many Native Americans in America are Christian. And they look at religion in a pragmatic way, kind of like the Chinese do. It's medicine. And why would you not take whatever medicine has power? So if Jesus has power, I'll take some of that Jesus medicine, but not at the expense of my ancestral medicine. Medicine serve different needs. Let's be practical. So you will find among many natives that they are Catholic, are Protestant, and Native at the same time. With that in mind, let's turn to the first reading. Sophia?
Yeah, let me share screen.
And the first one's a bit long, and I hope somebody else will read it. So maybe Sophia
I
will
was
read it.
I was going to ask actually Louis if that's okay. Louis has spent a long time with Native Americans, and I'm hoping, Louis, would you be comfortable doing the reading with us, for us?
Sure. Oh, are we going to start with this one? This beautiful land?
Yes.
All right, excellent. Your God seems to us to be partial. He came up to the white man. We never saw him, never heard his voice. He gave us the white man laws, but he has no word for his red children, whose teeming millions filled this vast continent as the stars filled the firmament. We are two distinct races. There is little in common between us. The ashes of our ancestors are sacred, and their final resting place is hallowed ground. While you wander away from the tombs of your fathers, seemingly without regret, your religion was written on tables of stone by the iron finger of an angry god, lest you might forget it. The red man could never remember nor comprehend it. Our religion is the tradition of our ancestors, the dreams of our old men, given to them by the Great Spirit, and the visions of our chiefs, and is written in the hearts of our people. Your dead cease to love you and the homes of their nativity as soon as they pass the portals of the tomb. They wander far off beyond the stars, are soon forgotten, and never return. Our dead never forget the beautiful world that gave them being. They still love its winding rivers, its great mountains, and its sequestered vales. Every part of this country is sacred to my people. Every hillside, every valley, every plain, and every grove has been hallowed by some fond memory or some sad experience of my tribe. Even the rocks that seem to lie dumb as they swelter in the sun along the silent seashore in solemn grandeur thrill with memories of past events connected with the fate of my people, and the very dust under your feet responds more lovingly to our footsteps than to yours, because it is the ashes of our ancestors, and our bare feet are conscious of the sympathetic touch, for the soil is rich with the life of our kindred. And when the last red man shall have perished from the earth, and his memory among white men shall have become a myth, these shores shall swarm with the invisible dead of my tribe. And when your children's children shall think themselves alone in the field, the store, the shop, upon the highway, or in the silence of the woods, they will not be alone. At night, when the streets of your cities and villages shall be silent, and you think them deserted, they will throng with the returning host that once filled and still love this beautiful land.
And let's read the next one too, and then talk.
All right.
This is Navajo. Go ahead.
The earth is beautiful. The earth is beautiful. The earth is beautiful. The earth is beautiful. Below the east, the earth, its face towards the east, the top of its head is beautiful. The soles of its feet, they are beautiful. Its legs, they are beautiful. Its body, it is beautiful. Its chest, it is beautiful. Its breath, it is beautiful. Its head feather, it is beautiful. The earth is beautiful.
All right. We're going to get some more earth-centeredness in the readings to come. But we began with one that has a little angry tone at what the Europeans brought to a continent that was once inhabited only by tribal peoples. So any thoughts? Anybody want to respond to that first passage in any way? Deborah.
I love hearing their take on Western religion.
Yeah.
Their take on our God. I loved hearing that.
Good.
It was harsh, but it was very gentle and it was true. It is definitely true to, I'm sure, how they feel or felt.
Thanks, Deb. Anybody else? Just a response, just like Deb's. Nita.
I see something that kind of connects with what you said, Jay, and that is this need for a deep respect, not necessarily a quick experience to go give me a fix with the sweat lodge or whatever. But I have lived among the Zulu people, the Ashanti people, both in Southern and Western Africa. I've also spent some time in Ecuador among the Quechua people. And in all situations, the respect for ancestors, those who've gone before, and of course the earth is paramount. And there's a part of me that is like, how dare we intrude on anything except with deep respect and a spirit of wanting to learn and be open, because their ancestral connection and worship, as well as that of the earth, is so profoundly holy. And I think if we're lucky enough to even dip a toe in that water, it should be done with the utmost care and respect.
Thank you, Nita. Anybody else? Just a response. Any response is fine. And Tish, I saw your question and I'll respond in a moment. Let's take what Deb said. And Sophia, if you can throw that up again one more time, that top one. And there's a phrase in here I want to get. Oh, your religion was written on tables of stone by the iron finger of an angry God, lest you might forget it. And you can bring that, you can close that off now. We'll have gallery view. Tish, this is related to your question. The native traditions were oral traditions. And that means that their teachings, their ideas, their stories were communicated by word of mouth. And they were not written down. So there were not texts in the sense of written texts in these traditions. And what you are reading here are reports of things that people have said, and sometimes they're from anthropologists. So the way we know about some of this is through the work of anthropologists, not that there was a sacred text in which what we read was written. And one just question that we can raise here is, what difference would it make to us if we grew up in a tradition that had sacred texts, the Quran, Torah, New Testament? Has that been a gift, but also a curse? Is there something that written texts close us off from that is best heard and felt orally, and that hides us from the palpable presence of the more than human world, because we focus on the written text as where we'll get our guidance? So is there a critique of text-based religions implicit in the idea of oral traditions? That's a question. Now, I would like for each of you to solve it completely once and for all.
Oh, sure, I'll solve it right now. So of course, your question, which is a statement, which is a question, implies that anything written down is limited. It's frozen in time. It kind of, it dilutes the experience, kind of distills it into a few little words. But traditions don't live only by text. They live by interaction with the text, with dialogue, with deep meditation. So maybe in the translation of what religion was, the image was simply of a text with an angry God who inscribed on stone a set of regulations. But there's so much more to be shared. And I think in the interfaith of people connecting with each other, the shared experiences of story, of life experience, of mystical moments, have nothing to do with the information that was given in shorthand on a tablet of stone. Like you make yourself a note in the morning. It is not the fullness of your day. This is a distilled version given to a people in another language, in another culture, on another land, without any of the, I think, passion and lived experience. So I think what we share, and I don't take ownership of this, but whoever shared that tradition of an angry God cheated the individuals who received it, but they really deprived themselves of dialogue with what this experience, the spirituality of the people they were encountering were. I hope that was a long-winded answer that said something.
I think you answered it. Go ahead. Anybody else want to jump in on this issue? I'm not sure what the question is, but you can still have answers even if we don't know the question.
Jay, this is Jerry. Listen, as a severe layman who has a older brother who is a scholar, I've always felt a little bit like these translated documents are translated into how people would like their opinion to be heard at times versus what was really said. Because every once in a while I'll run into someone who goes back to the Hebrew or goes back to this and goes back and they said, well, really, that's not what they meant. And so I have people who are adamant about a particular Bible phrase or biblical phrase, and I just always want to say, what did they really say, and were they as adamant as you are about it being right? So I'm actually much more of a relationship engaged person than I am a grammatical person, and I have this kind of sixth sense that it's, you kind of go back to a Saturday Night Live skit with some of the translations, and I don't know, I wish I was smarter. In my next life, I might be a theologian, but I'm always concerned about translationitis or something.
Let me focus the question just a bit. Sophia brought in a person that wrote a book the other day at your book study, who talked about problematic ideas within the Abrahamic traditions. And one of the problematic ideas was the idea of sacred scripture. And her point was not that it has teachings that are dangerous or misinterpreted. Her point was that the whole idea of a written text, her point, can freeze the mind and lead to kind of in-out dichotomies, us versus them. We've got the truth because it's contained in the text, however interpreted. And so I think that the challenge of an oral tradition is to say, is there something good about having a religion without a sacred text? Or are sacred texts kind of essential to what we want to mean by healthy religion? That's the challenge. Now, but I think Carol's got the answer. I'm kidding. And so I think if we stay here forever, there's a lot of good things to talk about, but does anybody want to respond very quickly to that? And then we'll just move on. Yeah, Deb?
It's also very important to incorporate our understanding of the motives of the interactions. And as I understand history, the motive was not to bring them a better life, but to bring them the Western life and eradicate their Indian life. So I'm sure that fed in this reading, some of the anger that comes through. It's not hatred. I mean, it's an interesting way that they worded it. They're angry, but at the same time, it's not personal. They don't hate the settlers. Maybe they did. I don't know. I'm just saying it's not as harsh
Well,
as I've seen some other language.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's move on. Let's move on. We have many readings, and so let's move past this one. Sophia, if you could do the next one. It's life, am I? Do you want to, by the way, Lewis, I think I have no idea, but I say Hozoni.
I have said Hojoni in the past, but I don't know either if that's correct or not.
Well,
I've
Wilfred,
also heard it. I've also heard Hojani.
Yeah.
anybody that wants to mispronounce it is a good friend of mine.
Louis, would you do us the honor, or shall I read? How do you feel?
I can go ahead and read. I'm not super familiar with Navajo, so I will also mispronounce it. Hajoni, 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 Hajoni. The earth, its life, am I. Hajoni, Hajoni. The earth, its feet are my feet. Hajoni, Hajoni. The earth, its legs are my legs. Hajoni, Hajoni. The earth, its body is my body. Hajoni, Hajoni. The earth, its thoughts are my thoughts. Hajoni, Hajoni. The earth, its speech is my speech. Hajoni, Hajoni. The sky, its life, am I. Hajoni, Hajoni. The mountains, its life, am I. The sun, its life, am I. White corn, its life, am I. Yellow corn, its life, am I. The corn beetle, its life, am I. Hajoni, Hajoni. Hajoni, Hajoni. Hajoni, Hajoni.
I think we can do the next one also, and we can go ahead with that, Lewis.
All right. The web of Wakan. Every object in the world has a spirit, and that spirit is Wakan. Thus, the spirit of the tree, or things of that kind, while not like the spirit of man, are also Wakan. Wakan comes from the Wakan beings. These Wakan beings are greater than mankind in the same way that mankind is greater than the animals. They are never born and never die. They can do many things that mankind cannot do. Mankind can pray to the Wakan beings for help. There are many of these beings, but all are four kinds. The word Wakan Tanka means all of the Wakan beings because they are all as if one. Wakan Tanka Kin signifies the chief or leading Wakan being, which is the sun. However, the most powerful of the Wakan being is the Nagi Tanka, the great spirit, who is also Takashala. Takashala signifies the blue, in other words, the sky.
Thank you, Lewis. And I cut that off, but it because it was long, but I think you get a sense of it. So let's go back to that first one for a minute, and then we'll go to Wakan. Is there anything unique for you? The way of posing it, the earth, its life, am I. The earth, its feet are my feet. Its legs are my legs. Its body, my body. White corn, its life, am I. Yellow corn, its life, am I. So you can close that, Sophia.
Yeah.
Does that strike anybody? That
Sally, you want to go ahead?
Sally? Yeah.
Even the pest, even the corn beetle. And we talked about this in a recent session about, mosquitoes and ticks. And is that part of God? Anyway, yeah, even the corn beetle. That one speaks to me.
I kind of like that too. Deb?
The first thing that I was struck with was the relationship they felt, not just knew or intellectualized, but they felt with the earth. And it was identical, as far as I can tell, to how I felt at the moment of childbirth with each of my children and as they were growing up, that they were flesh of my flesh, they were bone of my bone, that I was them and they were me.
Yeah. Anybody else? Lauren?
I really like this one, and it reminds me of part of a speech that I listened to recently of a Indigenous South American woman. And something that she said that I just absolutely love is she said that our bodies are of the land and the land is of our body. And it goes and it just illustrates how closely interconnected everything is. So anything that's done to the land has an effect on our bodies, and what we do to our bodies reverberates throughout the land. So I've always really liked it, and it makes me think of a number of different other religious and spiritual traditions that, illustrate how everything is connected. You can't go and pull one string without affecting the ones surrounding it. So,
Lynn?
I'm just reminded of dust to dust, ashes to ashes. That basically says it all. I mean, we came from the earth and we go back to the earth.
Jay, I think one thing very beautiful about this passage is the way it's written. It's not I-centered. I mean, I've read a lot of earth-centered readings, but they're always I-centered, relating to the earth, whereas this one is earth-centered, relating to me. And it switches the whole focus, and I think it's beautifully written.
Can you say a little more, Sophia, about how it switches it?
I mean, let's just read it one more time. So it doesn't go, I am earth. It goes, the earth is I. The earth is beautiful. The sole of its feet, they are beautiful. Its legs, they are beautiful. Its body, it is beautiful. So it starts with earth.
I think you may have read two passages at once there, but I think the second one even accented even more your point, that it begins with the earth is I think.
Go back to the readings.
Yeah, try it again or pull it up. We'll see if we can take one more look at it.
Yeah, so we are going to, actually, I'm talking about the second reading here.
Yeah.
Let me read it again. So it goes, the earth, its feet are my feet. Hojoni, hojoni. The earth, its legs are my legs. Hojoni, hojoni. Its body is my body. Hojoni, hojoni. The earth, its thoughts are my thoughts. Hajoni, hajoni. So earth is the center and I am the extension right here in this paragraph. I am stemming out of the earth. That's how I am read it. Like it is the earth. Its speech is my speech. Hajoni, hajoni. So that's the beauty of this passage, that it centers and starts from the earth and it extends towards us as if we are coming out of earth.
Yeah.
I find it immensely beautiful, whoever wrote it.
I'm glad you said that. And I just want to say, for me too, it's so important in that way. I want to mention to everybody that if you really get interested in earth-centered spirituality, there's a Catholic theologian. He called himself a geologian. His name is Thomas Berry. And many ecologically sensitive people are influenced by Thomas Berry. But he resent's not the right word. A lot of people say, I'm connected to the earth. I'm part of the earth. The earth is beautiful. Let's respect the earth. But he said, but that always begins with the I. And he said, the truth of the matter is we're dimensions of the earth. It's not just that we're part of the earth, we're dimensions of the earth. And Sophia used the phrase, we're extensions of the earth. And that's an important idea. Carol, and then we'll move to Wakan.
I also think that Sophia's right in calling our attention to the drum beat of the reading, to the chant of it, to the alternate state that we're invited to enter, where we disappear. Not only it doesn't start with the I, the goal is to become empty, or to become transparent, or to disappear into what is, if that's a language, to disappear into what is the oneness. So it's almost a drumbeat, a call, a chant written with that intention of shifting our consciousness. I can't hear you.
Jay, you're muted.
The role of rhythm and of drums in these traditions is so important. And drums have vibrations, we feel that. So rhythm and drum beat and heartbeat.
And repetition of words.
And repetition.
Heartbeat, right.
Let's go for Wakan. Go ahead.
Yeah, one thing, the whole passage reminds me of the creation story in so many ways, in that the earth wasn't created for us exactly. It was more we were created out of the earth. Mm-hmm. And that makes sense to me. It makes our creation really come alive, our birth really come out of the earth.
So let's go to Wakan and see if we make anything of it. If you throw that back up again, Sophia, and does anybody have a sense, your way of saying what you think Wakan means? Lewis.
So I really liked this passage, and I just wanted to add, as kind of context for this passage, another way you hear Wakan said in Lakota communities is Wakan Tonka, which also just means the big mystery. So instead of referring to like a great spirit or a great deity, it's spirituality is often thought of as a great mystery. So I also think that's a great jumping off point for talking about spirituality.
Thank you, Lewis. And I love the phrase great mystery myself. Anybody else, what do you think Wakan is? Every object in the world has a spirit, and that spirit is Wakan. Do you have a name for Wakan? Your way of naming that. How do you do that?
So I come from a scientific background.
Okay, we can, let's have a gallery view. Yeah.
All right. I come from a scientific background, and so a lot of the times it's difficult for me to go and think of not scientific related terms when I'm trying to come up with alternate ways of thinking about things. But if I were to go and put my own spin on what Wakan is, I think of it as almost an energy or a frequency. Kind of like how in physics, energy is matter and matter is energy, and everything is constantly moving and changing and in process. And it's of its own devices. It does what it wants to do. That's the very general answer for it.
Anything goes. So we have energy and vibratory.
Lori.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Yes, I would say probably the word I use most is spirit. But another word that works there for me is formless. And I see the formless animating form. Mm-hmm. And so that's how it kind of makes sense to me. And maybe life also. Maybe that's a word.
Life and formlessness. Nita?
I like to use the word presence. I'm very much into the energy image too, because I think all is energy. But I like the term presence. It kind of encapsulates that. And I go back to the beginning with William's flute. That's presence. I mean, that was mystery for me. That's amazing.
Deb, thank you.
I have a question. it says that there are 4 kinds, talking about Wakan. It mentions 3 of them. It mentions, the sun, the great spirit, and sky, blue, or the sky. What's the 4th?
I wish I could answer that, and I think I cannot, because
Lewis
I've got the book here, and I could check for the rest of the passage. But
does Lewis know?
I do not know. In everyday life, the parts of the spirit are not so divided as when you're in a sweat ceremony, or you're just talking, or you're in a prayer or anything like that. It's usually just referred to as Takashala, which is just the sky form of Wakan. It's not so divided as when you read it in books. So I'm not actually quite sure what the 4th element is.
It's the great mystery.
Yeah.
I want to move. We'll keep moving. I'd like to say one thing that I find interesting. When Houston Smith, the author of The World's Religions, wrote his book, for a long time he didn't deal with indigenous traditions. So, it wasn't there. And then he added a chapter on indigenous traditions. And this that you're reading is meant to be a complement to Houston Smith's famous book, The World's Religions. But in the chapter on indigenous traditions that he added, he said something about Wakan, which I'll simply mention here. He used Laurie's word spirit. Let Wakan mean spirit. But his point was that many Western people, or many Abrahamics, associate spirit with God. And as soon as we hear spirit, we think God. It's natural for us. We may even think it's something God sends. It comes from God. And his point about this passage is Wakan can be disentangled from God. And you may not know if you believe in God or what you believe about God. That may or may not be your word. But you can still have a sense for Wakan. And there's a sense in which Wakan transcends God. It's a spirit, and it's in the trees, in the hills, in our emotions, in life. And God may be a manifestation of Wakan, but there's more to Wakan than God. And Smith's point was that is a wonderful challenge to those of us who are inclined always to connect with religion with God. That religion can be sensitivity to Wakan, God or no God. So I just wanted to leave us with that thought. If you want to really respond to that now, do it. But that we could do a whole course on that.
Yeah, let's go to the next reading, Jay. We're getting towards the close.
All right.
Okay, Louis, with tenderness they have come up.
With tenderness they have come up. Grandfather, Great Spirit, all over the world the faces of living ones are alike. With tenderness they have come up out of the ground. Give us the strength to understand and the eyes to see. Teach us to walk the soft earth.
Go ahead with the next one.
All right. Earth, teach me to remember. Earth, teach me stillness as the grasses are stilled with light. Earth, teach me suffering as old stones suffer with memory. Earth, teach me humility as blossoms are humble with beginning. Earth, teach me caring as the mother who secures her young. Earth, teach me courage as the tree which stands all alone. Earth, teach me limitations as the ant which crawls on the ground. Earth, teach me freedom as the eagle which soars in the sky. Earth, teach me resignation as the leaves which die in the fall. Earth, teach me regeneration as the seed which rises in the spring. Earth, teach me to forget myself as melted snow forgets its life. Earth, teach me to remember kindness as dry fields weep with rain.
I think in the interest of time, you can read the next one too. It's from a different tradition, South America, but let's go for it.
The universal mother, the mother of our songs, the mother of all our seed, bore us in the beginning of things, and so she is the mother of all types of men, the mother of all nations. She is the mother of the thunder, the mother of the streams, the mother of the trees and all things. She is the mother of the world and of the older brothers, the stone people. She is the mother of the fruits of the earth and of all things. She is the mother of our youngest brothers, the French and the strangers. She is the mother of our dance paraphernalia, all of our temples, and she is the only mother we possess. She alone is the mother of the fire and the sun and the Milky Way. She is the mother of the rain and the only mother we possess. And she has left us a token in all temples, a token in the form of songs and dances.
Okay.
That was fabulous.
Lori?
I just want to say that I feel a great tenderness and reverence just hearing what we've read today. It has, in a way, kind of put me in my place, which is a nice place to be. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any response is fine.
Jay, I think it's curious in a way that we're closing with this early Native tradition, that we're closing this whole session. It's sort of, what is it, the T.S. Eliot, we've come back to kind of where we've begun and see it for the first time.
Yeah.
Lauren?
Probably my favorite part of the three that we just read was the very last line of the final one that we read, where it says she leaves us a token in the form of songs and dances, which is something that is so wonderful for me, because for a very long time, I had a difficult understanding of like connecting to the spiritual or the greater than human, just through like verbal forms of prayer or through, rote memory prayer. And so going and learning that, there are multiple modalities of prayer that you can go and sing and dance, and to go and see that in a tradition that is, millennia older than the one that I was raised in is just it's very like humbling to go and say like, wow, well, these people had it right long before my faith was ever conceived of.
Mm-hmm.
Jay, I think the value has been perspective on this, because this is kind of my first dip into the Interfaith Center seminar issues. But like Lauren mentioned, with science, I spent an hour this morning on a webinar from UMS about bacteria in which antibiotics don't work on anymore. And you talk about something that I don't think about regularly is bacteria. But I do think it's perspective. Small bacteria that are kind of we're a host to, they're pretty agnostic, and all they want to do is survive. And we kind of get in their way. But what you've taught, what we've experienced both on the Jewish and Muslim and all these other different perspectives, are mechanism that people have used to have optimism about the future. I think it's really been helpful.
May there be that. May there be that. Sophia?
Carmen, I would like to move to Carmen.
Well, following what Jerry says, one of the advantages of being retired is I can follow any little bits of information down rabbit holes. And my recent rabbit hole was, I want to know more about viruses and what are the what's the hierarchy in viruses? What are the shapes of viruses? Where are viruses? Viruses are everywhere.
Everywhere.
Viruses, in trees, in plants. Viruses infect bacteria. In fact, what scientists are believing now is that we actually need viruses to keep some of the bacteria in check. So it's amazing what we're all finding. And, Laurie was saying, you follow science. How can you not be amazed? I mean, the physicists that came up with quarks, up, down, and strange, and charmed, and they felt the wonder and the mystery of the amazement of every level of what was studying, and the wakan, the mystery. And I am that, and it is I. And in reality, how much of the dividing lines that we utilize every day are the most important part. Maybe it's the part that unifies.
We're losing her sound.
Hey,
Yeah.
Carmen, you were coming in and out, but I think we got it. I think we got
Yeah.
the sense. And I think that, there was a book, many of you've heard the phrase years ago, The Tao of Physics, very famous book, The Tao of Physics. Well, we've just invented a new book. We're calling it The Wakan of Science. And it's up to the poets among you to write it, but we've got the title there. Maybe the Wakan of viruses. We can go back and forth.
No.
Yeah, Deb, Lynn, and then we need to close out.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking how this all relates to, we're grappling with climate change right now, what we've done to this planet and ultimately to ourselves by not following these precepts, by not understanding how we interact and how the earth interacts with us and how we're all one. So I probably got more out of this particular passages than everything else we talked about. Although it was wonderful. I'm not I'm not saying it wasn't, but this really spoke to me on a different level. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I want to thank Sophia. This is our last session for now. And I want to thank Sophia not only for making all this possible, which she does, but also for all the work that she's doing right now on so many other fronts.
Yeah.
And that includes the African refugees. So thank you, Sophia.
You are welcome. I am so sad to close this session, but also so happy that we had such a sweet and calming closing to our fall session. I think today's session was just perfect closing. We will be taking a break for Thanksgiving and then extending that break all the way to Christmas and New Year's. And we will restart our interfaith explorations from Wednesday, January 5th. So breaking off for 6 weeks, you all will receive a short survey from us in which we want you to tell us what you liked the most about this session, but most importantly, what would you like to see next? Jay and I will be working on fine-tuning the details of the winter session starting January 5th, but we want to hear from you. So you will get the survey in a few days. Please fill it out, give us your ideas. And and that's it. I want to close today's session with the Lakota prayer. And you will hear the reference to sacred space in the prayer. And I want you all to know that according to the native traditions, sacred space is that small, tiny bit of place between inhaling and exhaling. That's what it means when they say sacred space. You will also hear the term to walk in balance. And according to the native tradition, to walk in balance is to have heaven and earth in harmony, or in other words, to have spirituality and physicality in harmony with each other. So let's close with this Lakota prayer, all of you with me. Wakantanka, the great mystery. Wakantanka, the great mystery, teach me how to trust. Teach me how to trust my heart, my mind, my intuition, my inner knowing, the senses of my body, the blessings of my spirit. Teach me how to trust these things, that I may enter my sacred space, and so I may love beyond my fear and thus walk in balance with the passing of each glorious sun. Wakantanka, teach me how to trust. Salam, peace, and shalom to all of you. I'll see you all in January.